What's up, youth pastors and youth workers? We are back, and this is going to be a great episode with none other than the legendary Josh Griffin. He is an awesome dude. I've gotten to be buddies with him over the last few years, and I'm so grateful for him taking some time coming onto the show and having a real authentic conversation about youth ministry today, about working with middle schoolers, about how to stay healthy in ministry, the power of vision, how to get clear on that if you feel foggy. So many good things that we covered today. So make sure that you watch this whole thing. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks. Josh, thanks so much for coming on, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, intro yourself, and give us a little heads up on what you're doing now. And tell us a little about yourself, man.
Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Josh, and I co-founded an organization called Download Youth Ministry, and that's kind of consuming a lot of my time right now. But my heart is for youth workers. So I'm also a junior high pastor and have been in youth ministry about 30 years, which is a little crazy to say because I don't know very many people that have made it 30 years. So for what it's worth, still standing.
It's incredible.
So now my goal is to not only minister to the junior hires at my church, which I love, and they're a blast. I'm teaching. I just finished my talk for this weekend. So here it is, But I also like to help youth workers. And so I get to do that by creating all sorts of resources and curriculum and books. And it's been an incredible ride. And so now I'm an old man, and I occasionally get interviewed on podcasts.
Well, we were just talking about Star Wars before we hit the record button, and you're kind of like, do you feel like you're like Qui-Gon? You're not like Obi-Wan, but maybe like Qui-Gon Jinn stage.
Yeah, well, my friend and partner is Doug is Yoda, and that's okay because I don't want to be little and green and ugly.
Because he's old. No,
but he's a master and he's old. Yeah, I've always wanted to be Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon, I don't know. Yeah. So anyhow, if you're not a nerd, we've already lost you. So there it is.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the church you're at now and kind of what you're doing from the youth ministry side. And then I do want to dig a little bit deeper on the DYM stuff, which I'm super familiar with because it's amazing. And I would be really hard. I've never met a youth pastor who doesn't use something from DYM like once a month.
That's awesome. Thanks,
so
man.
You guys are the best. But
tell
us a little bit about your church first.
Yeah, so I started out in youth ministry, and there's only two of us on staff. It's me and the senior pastor, and 25 kids in the youth ministry, and it was awesome, and I loved it. I kind of had junior high and high school together, and then I left that church after 8 years, went to Saddleback Church here in Southern California, and took over for Doug Fields, actually, his high school ministry. And so I did just high school ministry. I was there almost 13 years, and then it took a couple of years off to enjoy some Download Youth Ministry time and launching and creating and helping youth workers. And then I thought I was kind of done in the trenches of youth ministry and would just get to kind of sit at that like training level and care for people and all of that. But God had another run in me. And so I'm just started my 5th year already as the junior high pastor at Mariners Church. It's another church just down the street from our house. It's a big church. Southern California churches are big. There's just a lot of people everywhere. So it comes with the territory. But do specifically junior high ministry. And I would say this, I wish someone had told me earlier how much fun junior high ministry is. Because even though I'm old, they think everybody over 25 is old. So it doesn't matter that I'm almost 50 because everybody's old to them. I tell kind of dad jokes and kind of corny humor sometimes and whatever. And as long as you love them, you care for them, you give them attention, listen to them, which very few people do. It's shocking how into their world they will let you go. They will listen to you, respect you, debate, have great discussions. Like junior hires, it's weird because they're deep thinkers and they're also incredibly shallow thinkers at the same time. I have one kid who's like 6'2" already and as an 8th grader, and I have another kid who looks like he's maybe in 3rd grade, but he's in 6th grade already. So it's just a wild, adventurous time of development and brain and body and all of the above, spirituality even. And I get to sit right in the middle of that crucial time. It's so fun, so rewarding. I would say in contrast to high school ministry, which it is very much, high school ministry, you kind of got to like earn it and fight for it. And it's easy to lose, like whatever the it is in this scenario. But junior hires are just so much more welcoming and inviting and honestly a little more encouraging.
Yeah.
So if you're in high school ministry, I'm going to pray for you right now, and we'll close in prayer. Just kidding, just kidding.
So,
I
I
just
mean,
love
I
junior high.
feel
It's
like
been a great passion.
middle schoolers, I mean, so I'm teaching on Sunday morning this last Sunday, and one of the kids' prayer requests, he's like, pray for my pet squirrel. Well, he's just a squirrel, lives in my backyard. And it's like, okay. And then like another kid's like, my grandma has cancer. And it's like, okay,
Exactly.
we're like, you're trying. And then I'm at a parent meeting on Tuesday, and I had this kid's amazing, and she's super quiet, and she doesn't hardly talk to, she's just like figuring her deal out. And her parents were like, we were sitting down with our daughter the other day, and she said, Mom, Dad, I think God wants me to go into missions.
Wow.
And I'm like, I feel like sometimes as a middle school pastor, or if you're a or you volunteer, whoever's listening, like, and you work with middle school students, it's easy to be like, I don't know, I guess just play games and like, I don't know, just entertain them and babysit them or something, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do, teach a little lesson. Like, cause I feel like there's so much there that most people just overlook because of either the immaturity or the age, and like, oh, they haven't maybe matured enough. But I'm like, the more I feel like I'm with you, the more I work with middle schoolers, the more I'm like, God, like, and they're to me, the most evangelistic, the most on fire, the most like excited, the most unashamed to invite, the most, just sometimes brutal, honest to your face. I love them. But like, how have you seen that over the years? Like, maybe from your years of working at the church of 25 kids, when you were in your 20s or whatever, to now, like, some things like tried and true, this has never changed, like some things about middle schoolers that you're like, man, I love working with them for this.
Yeah, I would say, and even going back to my junior high years, the people that formed me, the people that I would credit with making me who I am today, in addition to my parents and of course and all that, would be some of those people in that crucial window. So that hasn't changed. The people, if you invest in junior high or high school or whatever, in that window, you're making a massive difference in the trajectory of someone's entire life. So I would point right back to 3 or 4 men and women who shaped me. And I remember them now as an old man looking back. And I want to be that person. I want to empower our volunteers to be those people for our teenagers. So that hasn't changed. The need for acceptance, love, care, today more than ever, someone to not be on their phone or not be watching a screen, but looking into their eyes, so big. Someone who has time for them, someone who will listen to their questions and even push back a little bit. I mean, one of the things I'm always have to be really careful of when I teach in junior high. So this week we're doing we're kicking off our Christmas series and holidays and all that stuff. And I have to be careful not to ask too many questions when I teach, because junior hires will answer the questions that you're like, oh, it was rhetorical. They don't even know what that means. Anyhow, so the junior hire, they're just goofy. They're silly. And I love that they still have that. Like, something happens between junior high and high school and beyond. You just lose some of your like silliness. You become, they become self-aware and self-conscious and all of that.
I always say the biggest difference between 7th graders and 8th graders is that the 8th graders stop running everywhere. Like 7th graders like run everywhere, and then the 8th graders are like, it's not cool to run anymore. You can't run in public anymore. It's just weird. Like,
so true.
This always like, are they 7th, 8th grade? It's 8th grade.
Yeah, you could tell. Well, and I think junior high hasn't changed that much. Now, here's what has changed. High school has changed dramatically. College has changed dramatically. I would say the biggest shift has been the phone. The phone has opened up high schoolers to a whole new world, and now junior hires, if I'm honest with you, as junior hires, at least in our ministry, 8th graders all have phones, 7th graders, many, 6th graders, I used to say a few, now 5 years later, almost all, most. It's coming real quick for 6th graders. But I think the phone has probably changed everything. I mean, you could back up one step further and say maybe the internet or whatever, but just the idea of having the answer to every question, or a group for every whatever Google search. So if, a kid gets into something, they have this fleeting thought about, their identity or their sexuality or whatever, and then they can find a group of people like that. Or if you look at one thing one time, the algorithm says you want a lot of those things. And so I think the phone is an interesting, like, trap is probably too strong of a word. I'm not anti-technology or anything like that. But it's changed the game for high school students for sure. Here's how specifically. I would say it used to have that crisis of faith when you were in college, right? You'd go off to college and the professor would challenge what you grew up with. And I would say that's now the high schooler. And the high schooler is now having that crisis of faith because the faiths are wide open and the internet has brought everything and has given them answers that they find satisfactory that maybe they would not have accepted had they, maybe sheltered, I don't know, whatever, raised differently. So high school has completely become the place of. I mean, it's difficult to reach a high school student. It's still possible. I'm in. I'm all about youth ministry. I'm in, but it's hard. And I think some of those things that used to be reserved for high school students are now moving down into junior high. So exposure to a whole bunch of stuff, temptation stronger than ever. Whatever options, opportunities. There, it just keeps moving younger, and a junior higher is not equipped to handle that.
Yeah.
A high schooler probably wasn't really equipped to handle that. And we weren't doing such a great job in college. So, there's just so many pieces of development that are still happening. So for a device to capture someone so quickly, it's concerning to me. It's changing the generation. I heard a quote a couple weeks ago that's kind of stuck with me right now. It said the question was, when do you give kids a phone? And the answer was, when you want them to lose their innocence. And I went, oh, that hurts. Like, yes, but And so I'm not a doom and gloom. I'm an optimist. I'm all in, but I'm very aware of what's happening to the development of our teenagers, the struggles and the pressures that have crept down into high school and are now into junior high. And but I believe in the power of Jesus and the gospel to change lives, and I still get the front row seat to seeing him do that every day, every week. So I got to baptize 7 kids last week.
Wow.
So it was the best week of my life. So
yeah.
God's still doing great things. I think it's just more challenging. And maybe that's what happens when you get old. You start saying, this back in my day, I don't know. Maybe that's just what happens when you get old. You get more reflective about how much simpler it was back then.
I mean, it is true, though. Like things are changing. I was just listening to something else and like a Barna deal, like 40% of Gen Z and younger identify with like being non-spiritual or non-religious, but maybe spiritually inclined. So it's like there is an element like our culture is changing. Like I am shocked, like the biblical literacy of my youth ministry now, especially as we've grown and been more evangelistic and have more and more de-churched or semi-churched kids coming in, even kids who have grown up in the church. It's like the amount of times I say, hey, are you familiar with this story? Show of hands. And it's like, like a third or a quarter of the room raise their hand. And this is like maybe a really, really core, what I would imagine, like an essential Bible story.
Yeah, Daniel
like
the Lion's Den.
Yeah, top 50 story. Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. So, I mean, while it's kind of like, it can be sort of discouraging. I mean, I know the flip side of that is like, man, what an exciting time, because now we're working with raw material, because I feel like maybe more my generation, and maybe, I don't know if you've seen some of this in your generation too. We're kind of same era. Maybe a lot of like, a lot of Bible knowledge with little implementation, I had to learn I had almost no understanding of disciple making as a kid growing up in the church that I did with the like, we're not really discipling anybody. We're just going to teach and hope something sticks and something, I guess, hope we just hang out together, and it wasn't until later I had to not deconstruct, but I had to like, kind of like reshuffle some things and learn like, man, how do I actually apply this? So, whereas the big difference that I saw, it wasn't really until I was in college of like working with people, especially students, and I think this applies to teens, just the same as it does young adults, like coming from a place of, I don't know any different. It's like totally from scratch is a really exciting thing. If you have a really clear vision of like, hey, this is the type of disciple we're trying to make. So now we can run even faster, even much quicker, rather than maybe take the kid who knows all the right answers but has little to no implementation. I don't know if you've ever seen that, because I mean, I know you're in California, man. It's like, and I'm in the Midwest, so it's like you're sort of at the apex of being like post-Christian, and it just sort of creeps in to the middle. But
yeah, I would say very much so. I kind of find that a challenge. When I speak, I do assume that my audience does not know the story. even a top 50 story that I'd be like, how do they not know this? What is our children's
Mm.
ministry doing? Or we're not kidding.
Sure.
But like,
Yeah.
I honestly just make no assumptions. So I try to set up, even, and in my experience, we learn most of the story, but not all of it. So we learned about, whatever, King David and Goliath, but we didn't learn about David and Bathsheba, or we learned about Jonah and, being punished and going into the whale, but we didn't learn what happened after Nineveh repented. We learned about, the prophets of Baal, but we didn't learn about the depression of the prophet. So we kind of learned like
Yeah.
the good part of the story, the heroic part. And I
Yeah.
think we were left with like, actually, life is really hard. And now today's generation, mental, health is at the forefront of things. So, but it's contained in the stories. It's in those stories. It's in the Bible. It's addressed. We just chose to kind of overlook that. And now this generation is saying, please see me in
Yeah.
my humanity and in my
Yeah,
pain.
I remember preaching like a kind of a pump up, like Joshua 1, like be strong and courageous. And I
Let's
had this
go.
kid who was in my small group who had been visiting for a handful of weeks, non-Christian kid, and he's like, I mean, I had always heard those stories as a kid, like Noah and the ark, or like the Israelites taking over Canaan, and it's like, yeah, they're the heroes from his perspective, not as a Christian. As a kid, looking at it from like, especially like turning on the news today, like was what's happening in Israel at the time of this recording. He asked a question. He's like, "Why did God ask the Israelites to kill all those people?
Yeah.
Is that a good
Yeah.
thing?" And I'm like, the questions that I'm getting younger and younger, and like I'm like of real critical thinking about, man, like what does the Bible say? How does it apply to our life? Is this a God that I can trust? I mean,
Yep.
how have you seen students, as the longer you've been in ministry? How do you handle that? And do you think there's a place maybe for more like teaching that type of like, rather than just hitting the highlights and hitting the
Yeah.
play, like a DJ, play the hits,
Exactly.
but
I
actually
mean,
really, how do you teach the kids how to critically think about their faith in that way, especially
Yeah.
at scale? You're in a
Totally.
big church. It's really hard to do
Yeah.
that. Like we have thousands
Yeah.
of kids. How do we do this?
Yeah, I'd say it is really difficult. My temptation is just to play to my strengths and play to my weaknesses. So tell kids what I know and what I'm confident in and what I believe, and then help them address the weaknesses that I see in myself. So here's the temptations, struggles, failures, whatever, pride, arrogance, lust, whatever, the stuff that I know everybody experiences that, and I know this stuff about God is true. He's our rock, our salvation, and whatever. But there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on the edges now, more than ever, that have come into the limelight. So the good news is that the Scripture pretty much addresses it all, and
Yeah.
so it's confusing. I do think the questions. I'll give you an example. We did a series in high school ministry, so it's been a few years ago, but I said it's a choose your own adventure series. What series do you want us to teach on? You choose the topic. I'll write the messages. Let's go. And we had all sorts of stuff on there. And the number 3 was war. The third most requested topic was war. And that blew my mind that they were so. I would have never given a message on war. I would have never taught about weapons or guns ever. I would have never crossed my mind that I would be like lie, cheat, steal, temptation, lust, whatever. I get those, right? And that was the third most requested one. Second one was end times, and the
Wow.
first
Yeah.
one was sex. So I mean, I guess that's a little more predictable. So,
Yeah.
but those big questions and all of the gray areas and the mental health stuff, it's here. And in all fairness, I used to be a little dismissive of some of the things like bullying. I'd be like, bullying? That's what we call growing up. What are you talking about? Like bullying? It's so lame. And then I have kids of my own. 3 are in college now. One's a junior in high school, and I see bullying, and it's not the same, and it's really hard,
Yeah.
and it messes with kids, and it sticks with kids for a long time. And some of the cyber stuff and some of the unchecked, like it's a different world. So I think when I was so dismissive and like whatever, like grow up, now I am really careful because I've seen it and I've seen the damage of it too. So it's a different world, but truth scriptures remain the same.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's easy too sometimes to get just caught up in like putting out like fires with whatever happens.
Yeah.
At least I've seen this in my own life and my own
Totally.
industry, and I've been doing this that long. I'm in my 7th year, student ministry, but I feel like it's really easy to just kind of like put out like, oh, this is a thing that I've got to address. Maybe we need to do a sermon series here. This is the most urgent thing, but like what can drift into the back. And I'm imagining this, and I'm at a multi-site location type deal, and we have a little bit of structure to help us stay focused on the vision. And I want to take a second to talk a little bit about, and from your perspective, leading on big teams is the concept of vision for your ministry and getting that crystal clear. Like, talk through like what that looks like for you right now from the church side. Like how important is it to have a clear vision, and what does that look like for you? What are you chasing after? And maybe just some words of encouragement on how to do that. Maybe if you're a youth minister or youth worker listening and you're like, I know what we're doing, but like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? I just don't know where this is going. I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but would love to hear your thoughts on that vision topic.
Yeah. I think because I've done youth ministry for a long time, I've had seasons of incredible clarity. Like, I know what we're doing, I know what we're going after, and I know how to get there. And I also have had seasons of, I'm not sure I'm good at my job. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know where we're going. And it's a miracle they still paid me last week for running this thing. So I would say the long view of things is really important, because in the short term, you might be like, I have all the vision in the world. Let's go. Let's take the hill. And, you could also be really defeated and going, I'm never going to get out of this funk. This church is a dead end. Why am I even here? There's a few things I would say. One, ask God for vision, and He will give it to you, and He will show up. And there is a vision for His church, because He's building His kingdom on His church. So there is a vision for the future. Now, usually most vision revolves around growth, like numerical growth. And I would say I understand that. And working at a big church, that is part of the gig. Right now, Mariners is in like a phase of growth. And I'm like, it's not a phase. They always want to see the numbers going up. But I understand that too, right? Because the gospel changes lives. We should be seeing our church grow. I understand. But I don't want to just see kids, attending. I'm okay with any growth. So a kid who says, last week, some kids saying yes to baptism, I'll take it. We had some kids memorizing scripture. We have a little panel in our program every week, and kids are coming up and memorizing scripture for the first time. I'm thrilled about that. The new year, we're doing a series on like Bible reading. It's called Habits. We're doing like a Bible reading thing and get kids into the Bible. That's huge growth. So my vision, I'm very evangelistic. So I'm always trying to reach the kid who isn't there. But I've surrounded myself with people who really care for the kids who are there. And so I got people who care deeply about fellowship and deeply about discipleship, and some that care about ministry and serving and all that. And all of those are acts of worship to God. So I know that I'm wired like vision for the people who aren't yet. And when someone comes to South Orange County here in California, I want them to hear about Mariners. I want them to get plugged in right away, first time feel connected, and boom, they're in. That's my dream. But I got people who care deeply about, once they're here, how do we help them grow? Once they're here, how do we help them serve? And so I think that the vision, God's going to give you a vision, and it's going to have a particular bent to it. And then surround yourself with key volunteers or people that will help lead the holistic vision for where you want to go. Yeah. So right now we're chasing after growth, but not just numbers.
So, I'm sure with that, I don't know how nerdy that we talk about, like KPIs or like key performance indicators, or at least something on like a dashboard to be like, hey, these are some things that are core that we want to see something that God do something in. If you were going to speak to someone who's like, I know that God wants to use our ministry to reach people. I know He wants us to grow the people that we have here to become more like Christ, to be discipled. But like, I just feel scattered. Like, if I 3, 4, 5 things, like, man, these are the things that are like the key. I wouldn't even hate that term performance, but just like things to focus on. What would you say? What would you say to that? Or like, these are essential.
Yeah, no, that's great. I would say the first one does have to be numbers, numerical growth or whatever your main program is. And I say that primarily a little dismissively because that's what your church is going to ask for. Probably, maybe not, but probably. I think the attendance on your youth group primary program is important and it should be tracked. But I would add to that, dashboard, I would add, how many resources did students take in this month to grow on their own? Because if a
Yeah.
kid is reading the Bible, doing their devotions, praying, etc., using the tools that we've created or downloaded from Download Youth Ministry, if they're taking those resources, then they're self-feeding, they're growing. Like, man, that's a huge indicator of someone's spiritual health. If they're like, hey, I finished the devotional book you gave me, what's next? Oh, I'm living the dream. I'm living the dream. So, boom, I would count that. I think the number of students that are in a small group or in a community group, life group is what we call them, is really big to us. So, especially in a larger context, I've worked in a really small church with 200 people in the whole church. And now I work at a church that has 200 volunteers in the youth ministry. So I know small and it's really good. And I know big, and big is really good. But they both have some shortcomings too. So what I'm hoping to do is create a youth ministry that feels really small while having all the benefits and smoke and lasers of the big. So for example, kids in life groups is a huge, important number for me
Yeah.
because I want to make sure kids are not just attending a service or learning the surface. I want them to take the next step spiritually. And so, but here's why. Again, it's not an attendance marker. It is, I want every kid in our ministry to have a mentor in their life. And because of the size, when I started in youth ministry, me and 20 kids, I can mentor all of them. It's a reach, but I can do it. But once you get above 20 or 30, maybe you reach 50 kids, you will collapse under the weight of
Yep.
shepherding that number of people. So to me, I want students divided up into 6 or 7 for every adult. And it's just a way for me to know that they're being pastored, they're being cared for, they're being loved. Because at this size, it's just not something I can do. And then I would add to that just a couple more. I would say summer camp is my evangelistic measurement. So if summer camp is sold out or full or bigger than last year, it makes me really happy because to me, summer camp is our front door. So it's like a giant welcome event. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a big one. And then we do a fall kickoff every year. Same thing, big evangelistic. Those are two things that I want to look for that are healthy. So yeah, so kids attending a service, kids attending an entry level program or event, the number of discipleship resources, and the number of kids in a small group. If I was to think about it a little more, I think in our church we call it I believe. When you trust Jesus, when you become a Christian, whatever, born again, saved, insert your language here. Ours is I believe. And so when students say I believe, that's a really big deal. When students get baptized,
Yeah.
that's a really big deal. So yeah, so that's a little bit of a dashboard that I would look at versus just attendance.
Yeah. What is something when it comes to on the growth piece? I know you said you're focusing on that, and I think, and I unfortunately, but not necessarily unfortunately, just is what it is. Like, I know there's that principle that healthy things grow, and I know that there's a lot of pressure probably on youth pastors from hopefully not their bosses and other people higher up at their church, but unfortunately that just is what it is. Like like to have some of that pressure applied maybe, but also just that every youth pastor feels I need to grow this ministry, and they should from the Lord. But I think a lot of times, and I think I wrestled with this for years, feeling like I want to grow. I just don't really know how. Like, I don't know what's the next step in order, because I just feel like I keep getting in my own way. What are some things that you've seen in your own ministry, in other youth pastors that you've mentored and discipled and seen and mobilized on your teams or maybe at other churches you've really seen these have been growth accelerators? Because I just want to help youth pastors listening to this walk away.
Totally.
Like, that's something that I can focus on right now to have some little micro wins in order to gain some morale and some inspiration. So yeah, what are some things you've seen that have been growth catalysts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a whole bunch of ways to answer it, but I would say for me personally, when I have been, lack of vision, defeated, stressed, whatever, I would say being around people that have been there before me is gigantic. So people that would say, hey, you're not done. You're just in a tough season right now. That's a gift to me. or for someone to, go to a conference or an event and you come in dry, empty, wiped out, exhausted, and you walk away going, all right, I'm inspired and ready to take the hill now. So I would say being around people that have been there before, a mentor, usually a safe person outside of your church, someone you can vent to, but someone who can also really give you some wisdom and instruction is a huge catalyst. And then a conference or event, it could be a podcast, training, whatever. People say all the time, they're very kind. They're like, "You've mentored me," and I'm like, "I don't even know your name. What are you talking?" But because we put out so much stuff, people are like, I just listen to when I'm down or when I need vision or encouragement. And so it's very kind. But I would say you can be mentored by a whole lot of people today without ever, they don't even know it because there's so much great stuff out there. Hopefully, this podcast would be that for some people as well. And then I would say for me personally, I'd go back to evangelism. So I know my sweet spot when I'm stuck, when I'm frustrated, I go back to what I am called to do, which is to share the gospel and reach kids with Jesus. So,
Yep.
so for you, it might be different. For somebody else, it might be like, I just want to get kids together and in fellowship, and that will refill me and give me a vision for the future, or discipleship, whatever it is. There are moments when you shouldn't quit youth ministry, and that's like right after a big event. You're like, you've given all that you have, and you're wiped out. Don't ever make a big decision right around summer camp or one of those big events because you're done. So when you find yourself being vulnerable, stick to what you are called to do. Find somebody who can literally talk you off the youth ministry ledge and say, get back in the game. You're not done yet. It was the best advice I ever got as an early youth worker. When things got tough, instead of looking down and like hunkering down and solving this issue or whatever, I would immediately look up and be like, okay, what church can I go to that doesn't have problems? And someone said to me, they said, no, you're supposed to bloom where you're planted. And that sentence changed everything for me because God called me right here, right now, for this time, for these kids. And when he calls me somewhere else, I'll go and he'll be clear. Yeah. But for right now, don't look at the church down the street that has more or less or is doing everything perfect. And you're comparing your senior pastor to them or the dysfunction that you know to what you assume is a perfect place. Just forget it. And God has called you here for this moment. And so stick to it, stick with it, and bloom where you're planted. Anyhow, that was some really important stuff for me through some of those harder seasons.
It's so easy to get to a place where you're unhealthy. I don't know if you've ever been at that place. I know that I have, where my life just feels out of balance. Like my marriage isn't getting what it should.
Yep.
Or like my soul isn't getting what it needs. And for maybe at the expense or for the sake of whatever you feel like, whatever good cause you want to put on, like I'm doing what God wants me to do, and now I'm neglecting things like. And we've all probably been there. But so how have you, or maybe just some words of wisdom, like how do you stay healthy? How do you stay focused on what really, really matters and balance that? Because it's so easy to get out of that in ministry.
Yeah. There's a few different thoughts that I'd have immediately because this one strikes a chord with me because it's so easy to get out of balance. It's so easy to get your priorities mistaken. And in all fairness, the church, not my church or your church, but the church will take all that you'll give it. So if you'll give it everything, it will take everything from you.
Yeah.
So I would say, for me, I think it's just knowing my priorities. I think originally I wanted to be like the world's best youth pastor and a husband. And then it was like, okay, the world's best youth pastor, a husband, and a dad. And I think I'm supposed to be, a follower of Jesus who's a great husband and an amazing dad, and also happens to be a youth pastor. I think I had the order all jumbled up, and because the church will take all that you'll give it, you have to be really careful because you can lead yourself to burnout. You can have a wicked sarcasm and antagonism towards the church. You can be spiritually dry and desolate, but no one knows because you have mastered the mask of faith and Christianity. And I have a deep well because I grew up in Awana. I don't know if you're familiar with Awana at all, but
Oh,
I
I
grew
was
up.
an Awana kid.
Okay, baby, let's go. So
I
I've
was a
got,
Sparky.
yeah, I know
Oh
so many
gosh.
verses. Like I could
Yeah.
put together a youth talk in about 11 seconds. Like I'm good, but that doesn't mean my heart is
Yeah.
good. And I remember that well, the spiritual well, had long run dry and nobody knew because I was really good at hiding it. I mean, by nature, I'm a whatever, outgoing, a little bit of a performer, whatever. And so, as a showman, I'll never let you in on the real side of me. So now, I want to encourage you out there that are listening. If you are spiritually dry and empty and faking it, you're not helping anybody. You're not helping yourself.
Hmm.
If you're married, you're not helping your marriage, your family, whatever. Your ministry is suffering because of it. And so do whatever it takes, whatever it takes. Take a season off, a couple days off, fake a sick day, whatever you have to do, and get away and get your cup refilled. Sometimes that's with time with Jesus. Sometimes it's with people who fill you with God's spirit and encouragement and love. Maybe it's just getting away for some solitude. Solitude's not my thing, but I've heard other people say that, so I'll throw it out there. I want to be with people. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe it's you just your body. You're sitting in your office and you're counseling, and the burdens, spiritual burdens, are heavy, and
Hmm.
it can be so exhausting. People don't understand that. I come home, and my kids who are older now, they're in their 20s. They are like, "What did you do all day?" I'm like, "I just met with people and parents and counseled and wrote sermons," and they're like, "That sounds pretty easy, you know." But the spiritual weight of that is so significant. And I don't know a youth worker out there that couldn't use a little more encouragement and love, a day off. And I would just say be careful not to be a performer. It's not realistic. It's not a good example to your students, anyhow. Make your marriage, your family, if applicable, a priority, and take
Hmm.
off the mask. Take off the mask. Halloween was a few months ago. We don't do that stuff. Take off the mask and live authentically. A practical way to put some of that in would be in your message. Just share a failure story and be honest about where you're at on something. That's okay. Just make sure that you're not just honest about where you're failing, but that you're also modeling how to get help and how to find refreshment. So I'll give you a quick example. I know I'm doing all the talking. Sorry, Ryan. I would say for me, pickleball, game changing.
Good.
Nothing else matters. I could be doing funeral prep, which is not fun.
Oh
And if I
gosh.
can just get an hour of pickleball, I will be fine. The world melts away. Or I have a radio controlled airplane, a little like whatever. It used to be gas powered. They outlawed those in California now. You can only have electric airplanes, whatever. If I fly an airplane for 20 minutes, it just frees me. Um, I'm not a great discipline, like get up at 5 a.m. and have an hour of prayer time. And that's not me. That's not me. I read the Bible, I go right into sermon prep mode. But I take a couple minutes that are just for me. And so I wish I was a little more of a warrior in that area. I'm not. Um, but over time, I know the importance of those few moments every day. That's just me and God sharing my burdens
Yeah.
and listening to what He says. So, anyway, how about you? How do you refresh? How do you refuel? How do you find new vision and all that?
I think just to try to do the same things that you're saying, like be okay with having a hobby. I think
Yeah,
that was a big
yeah,
thing that I neglected for a long time. I'm like, I need a hobby. Like I need to have something that is restorative, that is like refreshing to me, that is spiritual in a not stereotypically spiritual way. For me, but I'm old school. Like I'm like an old man. I like going for walks.
okay,
I have two big dogs, and so for me, like honestly, like going for like an hour long walk with my dogs is not only physically refreshing, but also just like it's just kind of I like my animals don't care about any of it. They're just like I don't care about your day. I just want to hang out
that's
with you.
true.
And I'm like
That's
that's what
true.
God, I'm like that's the way like our relationship with Jesus should be. It's like totally about the relationship. And I think like maybe I'm just a sucker for like for pets and stuff, but I'm like there's just such like we love that because it's unconditional. And I think like just remembering and doing things to help me remember, like, God doesn't love me because of what I do for him, but God loves me because I'm his son.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's completely it. And every time I feel like I'm way out of balance, it's because I'm trying to work to earn Jesus' favor, and forgetting that, man, I'm his, like it's Jesus' baptism. You're my son whom I love.
Yep.
And you're doing exactly what I want you to do by just uniting yourself with me. And like that's all that it's about, So that's been and that's hard work sometimes to like turn the brain off. I kind of run hot, anxious by nature.
Yeah.
So I struggle with anxiety in a big way. So just doing things to remember, like, it's not about what you do. It's not about what you produce.
Yeah, exactly.
And so simple things like walking. I mean, going to the gym, like reading a book. Like, I like watching history I'm like an old man. I don't know what is with me.
You are a little bit, but I like it. Do you ever take naps? Do you ever have a day off? Do you ever?
Yeah.
Does that help too?
Yeah, a great thing. I'm not a huge napper, but that's because I'm a caffeine addict. So I can't sleep. A big thing that we've done at a shift, and if you don't have this at your church, I would encourage you, if anybody listening to this, but I don't know how you've seen this in your life, Josh, but we have spiritual retreat days that we are supposed to take like once every other month. And then just like planning like an excursion away, like going out of the city, going to a coffee shop that I don't know anybody, going to a part of town where I can just like have an extended period of time alone, not with work to do, is I feel like rare for any of us.
So true.
So I think it's just like, I mean, like the amount of times I read scripture, it's like Jesus retreated alone. Like, he goes to the desert for 40 days. Elijah, when he's like depressed, I want to die, after he poured his soul out on the Mount Carmel or whatever, God's like, you're going to take a nap and you're going to eat a snack. Love it already. You're going to take another nap. You're going to eat another snack. I love it even more. And then he's like, and then you're going to go on a 40-day camping trip by yourself. You need time off because you are severely burned out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just so inspired by that story in 1 Kings 19 or 20 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I just am trying to like, and it's hard. It's hard for me to build rhythms like that, but I want to try to do that all the time. And just little things to help is just like tap into good resources, like tap into things like where you're like, I need a week where maybe I don't have to do everything from scratch. And that's where like, I really like tapping into stuff like you do at DYM, because like you guys provide so many great things for youth pastors to just take some load off, to come as an aid, to not feel like you have to be, because I do feel like there's this caveat with like youth pastors of like, there's this thing where I feel like they like, hey, how do you feel like being the perfect evangelist, pastor, shepherd, teacher, apostle, like all the spiritual gifts, and we'll pay you $28,000 a year? How does that sound? On salary, and we'll work you 60 hours a week. Sound good? And you're like, I can't do it all. I don't know how to do any. I'm not a games guy, or maybe you're like, I like games, but I'm not. I'm trying to figure out how to write sermons and. Like you guys do such a great job just resourcing the heck out of pastors. So I would love, with just the last couple minutes of your time, tell us a little bit about DYM, man. Tell us what why what you guys offer, why you do it, and what would compel somebody to be like, dude, I need to tap into some other resources like that.
That was super kind. I mean, thanks for those words. Like, I don't think I could say anything that would match that, but. The reality of it is we all have limited resources, budgets, and time. And I want to spend my time doing the most valuable stuff for my church that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
So if I'm buried making a video that's going to last 3 minutes, it's probably not a good use of my time. If I'm creating a game, and I love creating games, but if I'm spending 10 hours a week on program stuff, and it's just easier than ever that someone has created that game and you can grab it for a couple bucks and place it in your program. You don't have to even tell the kids that you didn't make it. You don't have to say, whatever, just lie. And then teach on lying next week. But no, the fun part.
Teach
exactly. Repent, lie. It works. But the idea is I can't go to your, 8th grade girls basketball game, but you can. So let Download Youth Ministry give you the game this week so you can go to the end of that game and cheer on the family or whatever. I can't go visit that family who's just experienced a big loss, maybe a junior higher that lost a grandparent or experiencing death for the first time. So don't waste time in the church office trying to create a video about something. There's probably a video on whatever you want to talk about on Download Youth Ministry. Even sermon prep, there's so many lessons and teachings and devotionals and curriculum. And we use all of the downloadable, reproducible items. So we have like a prayer journal that kids can pick up. We have a new believers guide. We have all these stuff. And all we did was we downloaded it, we put our church's name on it, and we printed it. And even the sermon, like I don't start a sermon. I like to do sermon prep myself still. But I never start from a blank Word document. I'll look and I'll be like, okay, I'm teaching on joy. I did a few weeks ago. So I went to Download Youth Ministry and I went bang, 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 bang. I got 3 talks on joy. That one was okay. This one, well, really good. I'm going to use that as some of that. And then I found another passage. I'm like, okay, now I can start. So instead of that blank Word document cursor, Google Docs just taunting you because it's a blank document, you have something to work from. Or instantly ready games, videos, whatever. It's pretty unbelievable site. So what happened was my buddy Doug and I said, what if you could like download, this is, the internet is a baby at this point. What if you could download like curriculum or a video or a game? And what if a youth pastor could make that and then he or she could get some money for that too? Why hasn't someone done this before? And what if they were really good? Like we edited things and we gave you new graphics and we upped it, and Download Youth Ministry was born. And so there's now thousands and thousands of resources on the website. There's about 12 to 15 new resources every week. My son is an author. He just put up some Christmas games, which is kind of funny watching him. Yes. He told me yesterday, 800 people downloaded my game since Monday. And I'm like, I know, dude, it's crazy. Like thousands of churches are now using Download Youth Ministry every week for something. It might be something small. It might be all of their program, and they're using like a fully loaded curriculum. We have training for your volunteers. Like you just don't have to do everything. And like you said, you're not good at everything. And so
I'm not. Somebody else out there might. Yeah. Actually, I am good at everything.
Yeah, well, when I was younger, I thought I was good at everything. Now I know better. But teaching is my passion, so I want to craft and create that. But like just before I jumped on for the podcast, I'm working on our volunteer Christmas party, and I just went on Download Youth Ministry, and we're doing a funny Christmas sweater. So I was like, Christmas sweater countdown, elf on a shelf game. And whatever. And I was like, bang, bang, bang. Okay, my program's done. It's that easy. So you do what only you can do. Go to that family and care for them and pastor them. Meet with that kid that is going through a tough time. The parents are hounding you. Go to that basketball game and sit in the stands and cheer on that family. Go be a great youth worker, and we will make your program great too. So that's the heart behind Download Youth Ministry. If you want to check things out, you can start a free trial of DYM for a penny. Just jump in, see if it's good for you. But it's been a wild ride, and there's still a ton of people that don't know about it. So that's one of the hard parts of youth ministry is it's always changing, and there's always new youth workers coming in. So if you've never heard of it, go check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have been a huge resource to us. I know our team.
Thanks.
Working on a team teaching model where it's me and there's 4 other youth ministers at the church with us at different campuses, one other one at my campus, and then at some others. I mean, we frequently will do exactly what you said. We'll buy series off of there and just use them as a launch pad, or sometimes we're like, nope, this is it. We're going to use it right away. So it's been a great resource for us for all of those things that you said. So, go check them out, give them some love, follow them on social media, get an account and start using some of their stuff. I'm a big personal user. We use stuff from them almost every single week. So, huge fan.
Thanks, man. Thank you. That means a ton.
Oh, of course. And Josh, thanks so much for your time, man. Any final words of encouragement, just for anybody listening? As we wrap up.
Happy to. I would just say this, your job's not done at your church. Hang in there, bloom where you're planted. God will make it clear when it's time to go. Get back to work. Maybe take a day off and then get back to work. Let's go.
Let's go. Thanks, Josh.
You bet. Thanks for your time. Great being on the show.